The SF-25 has been presented as a beast, with the ambition of returning to the top of Formula One. But the reality on the track tells a very different story. Can this car redeem itself on one of the most demanding circuits in the world, Suzuka? Today we unravel the truth behind Ferrari's performance at the start of 2025. Stay until the end because we're going to reveal the real reasons behind the controversial technical decisions, Vasseur's role, and whether Ferrari really has any hope of fighting for the championship. And before we continue, tell me in the comments, do you think Ferrari is hiding its true potential or is it simply lost in development? The previous car, the SF-24, was competitive but inconsistent. It achieved 5 wins throughout the 2024 season and allowed Ferrari to have a chance at the constructors' title until the final race in Abu Dhabi. However, its Achilles heel was evident, an extremely narrow operating window. When the SF-24 was at its peak, it was unbeatable, but if it deviated even a few millimeters in its setup, it would lose pace alarmingly. Therefore, the focus of the SF-25 was to develop a more versatile car, more docile in setup, and one that didn't require perfect conditions to perform. This is where Loic Serra, the new technical director from Mercedes, comes in. He replaced Enrico Cardile, now at Aston Martin. Serra brings with him a different philosophy, forged by years of success with Mercedes. Under his leadership, Ferrari has rethought key concepts of the car, from aerodynamics to thermal management, suspension, and mass distribution. The SF-25 doesn't just have new parts, it has a new design logic. The side pods were modified to promote a cleaner flow towards the diffuser, the suspension received a more aggressive approach with greater adjustability, and the car's floor was redesigned to improve high-speed stability without penalizing grip in slow corners. However, what appeared to be a consistent evolution in the wind tunnel and simulations has not translated successfully to the track. In the first races of the year, Ferrari has displayed erratic performance, unable to keep pace with McLaren or exploit the potential attributed to the SF-25. Already in Australia, the warning signs were evident: strategic errors, lack of pace on long runs, and excessive degradation. And in China, the drama unfolded. Not only did they finish outside the points in the main race, but both cars were disqualified for technical violations as basic as weight and floor wear. All of this calls into question whether the car's overhaul has been overly ambitious or simply poorly executed. Because it's one thing to redesign 99% of the car. It's quite another to understand and control that new 99% under race conditions. Ferrari faces a dilemma. It has a radically different machine, but it hasn't yet figured out how to make it perform consistently. Meanwhile, rivals aren't waiting. McLaren has established itself as the team to beat, and Mercedes seems to have found the key to its own development. Ferrari doesn't just need to make up ground in points, it needs to regain conviction. Suzuka will be the next testing ground for this car, which for now promises more than it delivers. And if the SF-25 doesn't perform in Japan, it will be time to ask whether the problem isn't just the car, but the team's ability to understand its own creation. The narrative surrounding Ferrari's alleged updates for the Japanese Grand Prix has become a case study in how information and misinformation can completely alter the perception of a Formula One team. It all began in late March, when rumors began circulating in specialized Italian and British media outlets that Ferrari was preparing a radical update for Suzuka. The news generated an immediate wave of enthusiasm among the tifosi. It was no wonder. Suzuka is one of the most technical, fastest, and demanding tracks on the calendar, and a specially designed upgrade package for that circuit could mean Ferrari would finally make the statement it so desperately needs. According to these initial leaks, the package included improvements to both the mechanical and aerodynamic aspects of the SF-25. There was talk of highly detailed work on the suspension, aimed at improving absorption in fast corners and the car's adaptability to the changes in elevation and lateral pressure that characterize Suzuka. The key was to achieve greater flexibility without losing stability, a difficult but ideal combination for sections like the first section of the circuit, where Suzuka's famous S-curves punish poorly balanced cars. In addition, significant changes to the rear diffuser, a redesign of the air intakes, and a possible redesign of the car's underbody were mentioned to improve aerodynamic efficiency and cooling. In theory, this package would allow the SF-25 to gain time in both fast corners and long straights, optimizing airflow under the car and reducing drag without sacrificing downforce. For many, this was the sign that Ferrari had decided to accelerate its development program, perhaps pressured by the poor performance in Australia and the disaster in China. And for a few days, the excitement was palpable. Was the SF-25 about to become the real threat expected since pre-season? But the story quickly took a dramatic turn. Insider sources from Maranello, quoted by media outlets such as Corriere della Sera, completely debunked the enthusiasm. Ferrari wasn't going to bring any major updates to Suzuka. The significant technical package, including the car's new floors, would not be unveiled until Bahrain, the fourth round of the season. And this wasn't a simple technical delay. It was part of the team's original schedule, meaning the entire narrative that development was being rushed was simply false. This episode exposed several problems. First, the disconnect between information leaked to the press and the team's actual planning. Second, the internal and external anxiety generated by Ferrari's poor performance, to the point that any potential rumors were disproportionately amplified. And third, the lack of clear communication from Ferrari, which allows the public narrative to get out of hand. Because the damage is no small feat, this back and forth of information not only confuses fans, it also puts additional pressure on the technical team. Rivals, alert to any sign of change, also use this kind of uncertainty as a reference to calibrate their own development programs. In Formula One, where every detail can mean the difference between a podium finish and oblivion, showing weakness in planning can be as damaging as an error on the track. In this context, Suzuka ceases to be just another race. It becomes a kind of purgatory for Ferrari. There will be no revolutionary improvements. There will be no immediate redemption. There will only be the car as it is, a relentless track, and the urgent need to demonstrate that even without improvements, the SF-25 can compete worthily. Because if performance continues to fail, the ghost of a lost season will begin to take shape sooner than expected. And the most worrying thing for Maranello won't be the lack of new parts, but the growing doubt about whether this car, even updated, will be enough. What happened to Ferrari at the Chinese Grand Prix wasn't simply a competitive setback. It was an internal and external earthquake that exposed, as rarely seen in recent years, the cracks in a project that promised stability and solidity with the arrival of Lewis Hamilton. The double disqualification of both drivers, Hamilton and Leclerc, for technical violations as basic as floor wear and car weight, respectively, didn't just mean losing valuable points. It was a sporting humiliation, a logistical nightmare, and a direct blow to the team's credibility with the FIA, the media, and millions of fans around the world. Leclerc's case could be considered unfortunate. Damage to the front wing at the start of the race led to a repair that, by the end of the Grand Prix, altered the car's final weight, leaving it below the regulatory minimum. A technical error not maliciously intended, but one that still resulted in an automatic penalty. However, Hamilton's failure went much deeper. His car violated the regulations due to excessive wear on the lower slide board, a component that ensures the car doesn't run too low, which is key to safety and technical fairness. At first, it seemed like a simple oversight in the height settings. But as the hours passed and new information emerged, it became clear that the error was structural. Hamilton's SF-25 had been experiencing problems since pre-season testing. In fact, Ferrari had been unable to complete a full race simulation with the British driver during testing in Bahrain due to technical issues. This lack of data meant the team arrived in Shanghai without sufficient references to properly set up the car, especially with the changes between the sprint race and the main race. Managing the height and suspension was a gamble, and the result was a car running too low for the entire race. And this unleashed a storm in Maranello. Not only because they lost a result that could have been a turning point after an erratic start to the season, but because it highlighted that the team still does not have full control over its car's behavior in real-life conditions. The SF-25 is a complex car, and its operating window appears narrower than previously thought. This error wasn't just one of execution. It was one of planning, preparation, and data interpretation. And that, for a team chasing titles, is unacceptable. What came next only exacerbated the crisis. The media focused not so much on the penalty, but on an alleged internal conflict between Hamilton and the pit wall. FOM selectively aired portions of the radio audio between the Briton and his engineer, creating a narrative of tension and disrespect. The footage showed Hamilton saying, "I'll decide when to change positions," which was interpreted as resistance to team orders. But what wasn't shown was the beginning of that same message, where Hamilton clearly stated, "I think I'll let Charles pass, I'm fighting." The part where the driver appeared cooperative was omitted, and the controversial part was amplified. Frederick Vasseur was quick to react. In an unprecedented statement, he directly accused FOM of manipulating the message to create drama. "This is a joke," he said in front of the cameras, visibly upset. But beyond the media spectacle, what truly hurt was the diagnosis he himself offered shortly afterward. Ferrari had failed at the most basic level. If you want to be a champion team, "There are things you have to do well every weekend without exception," he declared. It was a brutal but honest statement. Because what happened in China wasn't just a blemish on the standings. It was a reminder that in a sport where the margins are microscopic and the pressure immense, any mistake, no matter how small, can have devastating consequences. For Ferrari, the Shanghai race was a test they not only failed, but also called into question whether they are truly ready to compete at the top of Formula One. And that, when you're riding on the biggest name in the history of the sport, is a heavy weight to bear. The Ferrari case at the start of the 2025 season can't be summed up as a single technical problem or a single poor strategy. What we are witnessing is a perfect storm of errors, internal pressures, contradictory decisions, and inflated expectations. The SF-25 was born with the promise of being a revolution, a single-seater destined to return the Scuderia to the place many believe its historically rightful place. But in practice, the car has been more a source of uncertainty than hope. And Suzuka, with all its history and demands, could be the turning point in deciding what kind of season Ferrari will have. The context couldn't be more tense. The team arrives in Japan without any major updates, after a chaotic week marked by the double disqualification in China, and with its technical director under increasingly visible pressure. Despite Frédéric Vasseur's optimistic statements, the results haven't matched them, and the car's race performance is far from what is needed to compete against a McLaren in a state of grace or even a Mercedes that is beginning to find its rhythm. But the problem goes beyond the lost points. The big question now is not just whether the car can win races. The real question is whether Ferrari understands its own car. Because having a car with potential without knowing how to exploit it is, in Formula One, practically the same as having nothing at all. Simulations in Maranello may promise tenths of a second, but if those results can't be replicated on the track, the entire project begins to crumble from within. And into that scenario comes Suzuka. The Japanese circuit is a relentless judge. It demands precision, stability, downforce, tire management, and above all, confidence. No car can hide its flaws here. And that's exactly what makes this race so important. Because if the SF-25 fails to demonstrate solidity even with the base package without any upgrades, then the narrative that Ferrari just needs time or patience will begin to crumble. The team can't afford another technical error or another weekend without points. Every race without performance is a lost opportunity, not only for the championship, but also for sustaining the fragile balance of credibility the project still maintains. Internally, the engineers need answers. The drivers need confidence. And the fans need reasons to keep believing. That's why this Grand Prix isn't just about qualifying or race pace. It's about sending a message. To the rivals, yes, but above all, to themselves. Ferrari needs to prove that it's still in control of its destiny, that it's not a hostage to its own mistakes, misinterpretations of data, or media pressure. That the SF-25, despite its initial flaws, remains a machine with the soul of a champion. And now that we've analyzed every angle of this case, it's your turn. Do you think Ferrari can turn this situation around in Japan? Or are we seeing the beginning of the end of its 2025 aspirations? Leave it in the comments and tell us your perspective. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe and click the bell to keep up with everything that happens in this season full of unexpected twists and turns. And get ready, because in our next video we'll break down the drama unfolding within Red Bull, with driver changes, tensions between Verstappen and management, and decisions that could shape the immediate future of the most dominant team in recent years. Don't miss it.